Abdullah's a guy who go head-to-head with Andre the Giant and have people expect or at least believe that this guy was a credible threat to Andre.
Yeah.
He was a credible threat to everyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone. Even in 1990 when I started working with him, there was an ominous nature to Abdullah the Butcher. Like you didn't know. You weren't sure. And it goes back again to, okay, Johnny, I know the rest of that wrestling is whatever it is, but this guy's real. And I wanted a little piece of that for myself, inspired by guys like Abdullah and Brody. And I've said in my live shows, and I probably said here, that I wanted to be a cross between Brody and a Dynamite Kid. The brawling nature of Brody and the Tommy Billington's willingness to use his own body as a weapon. So Bill Goldberg would say, I want to be one part John Matuzak, great Oakland Raiders lineman with a very outgoing personality, and an MMA fighter. And then you sprinkle your own magic onto that, your own seasonings, and you make it your own. So I don't think anyone looked at me when I was, the scarier Cactus Jack, early 90s through mid 90s, and said, he's blatantly ripping off Terry Funk, even though we eventually all do, if you're in that brawling thing. But there are little elements of Brody and Funk and Abdullah the Butcher, although I was never as scary as any of those guys, but because I had that other element of the wildness with the style, I was able to make my own mark as well.
Everyone watching this considers you to be, I shouldn't say everyone, most everyone watching this considers you to be the nicest man in wrestling. And it's so crazy to imagine, but I remember, I was a fan, I was watching, that you were this crazed maniac, murderous, evil figure, but in reality, the nicest guy. I mean, for goodness sake, we've spent the better part of the last month just talking about your love of Santa Claus.
Yeah.
That's not the type of character we would expect you to play. But even in this room, there's pictures of you covered in blood and just psycho stuff. I'm
really proud. I'm looking now at the Japanese deathmatch shirt. I was so proud of the fact that when my wife took my two younger boys to Raw, that they were both wearing Foley shirts. And Huey, my youngest, he was wearing the deathmatch shirt.
That's awesome.
And I was really proud of that. I had to turn that amplifier up, right? So I know that people aren't interested, by and large, about the Santa stuff, except when it comes to December. But that was a character I was portraying that I put the same amount of love and attention to detail. But whereas Cactus Jack and Mankind especially was darker than Cactus was, but Cactus Jack, I had to become wilder, more aggressive. I'm not aggressive by nature. That was one of my major stumbling blocks, is that I had to find a way to create aggression, because without the aggression, none of the bumps I had lined up would pay off the way they would if I could be a more formidable and vicious heel. So that was always an uphill climb for me. But the same way that I had to create more aggression, more darkness for those characters, when it came to Santa, I had to find a way to become more gentle, more patient, more understanding. So it's on one level, I was never those guys, but they were a part of me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I don't want to sound like I'm putting too much. Like, if you're a non-wrestling fan, this sounds like a ridiculous.
No, it's effort and detail, attention to detail in the character.
Effort and attention to detail. And back then, when you were still, holding on to kayfabe to the point where I had a girlfriend for 6 months in the world-class territory who never knew my real name.
Yeah.
Never saw me when I wasn't at least partially in character. And this is a lesson I learned from Abdullah, even though it wouldn't come along until 2 years after I left World Class, is that Abdullah would be in character a lot of the time he was in public. So a flight attendant comes by and he's like, and Abdullah started shaking and his eyes were bugging out, and the woman comes over and just, flight attendant scurries off. And he's like, gotta keep the gimmick going, champ, So that at that time you built a gimmick by creating grassroots word of mouth.
Believability.
Believability everywhere you went. And I mean, as strange, you know, even when I was writing Have a Nice Day, some of that stuff seemed really outdated. But at the same time, you had to appreciate the lengths that at that time it was largely the men were willing to go to create the believability in those characters.